Good evening and welcome everyone to our Vocations Café. It's wonderful to see you all here. The whole idea of Vocations Café is to have a conversation about vocations. God is calling us to many different ways of life, and I had an opportunity to chat here with the oblates from around the world and talk with the religious sisters and married couple, and all from the perspective like how God is calling us to a particular way of life. Today we'll be talking about very specific call to share within the Oblate charism or the Oblate of St. Eugene de Mazenod. Many of you probably heard about the different ministries we have here in Hamilton, the Mazenod Door, named after St. Eugene de Mazenod, and with the outreach to the poor and helping them. And many people quite often will say to us, the Oblates, and probably you who are pastors, you will hear that in your parishes, like you're just different. And I think today we will have a chance to reflect on it, what the different means from the perspective of shared charism and the heart of St. Eugene de Mazenod. So I'm very happy to welcome today Sandra Prather, as we'll be chatting about that. I've known Sandy for many, many years. And Sandy, I don't know if you remember that, but I think the first time when we worked together, it was in Labrador. You did the parish mission. It was, I believe, maybe 15 years ago or so. And we went for the ice fishing and fall off the skidoo on the trails because it was so soft. But that was a good experience of working together and traveling together. Welcome, Sandy, and maybe just introduce yourself to our viewers.
Yeah, I will say that I fell off the back of your snowmobile twice. And finally, Father Tony said, put her on my snowmobile. And he didn't dump me, I would say. And also, that was the deepest snow I have ever been in. I fell off and put my leg down, and I sank right up. So Labrador was
good memories. Good memories.
Well, it was a unique missionary experience for me.
Absolutely.
But, yeah, so lovely, so lovely. So, what was the question? What you wanted to know?
Just introduce yourself to our viewers who are viewing us. Who you are.
Thank you. Well, first of all, it is a delight to be here. Thank you. I am always enthusiastic to speak about my oblate life and the oblates themselves. So I'm a wife and a mother and a grandmother. Wife to Bob, and mother of 4 adult children and 10 grandchildren. We have 5 grandsons and 5 granddaughters. And I live in Western Canada. I was born actually where you are, Jarek. I was born in Ontario. Yeah. Actually, at St. Joe's Hospital. So I think that's not probably far from where you are.
No, we can see from here, just up the street.
Yeah. So I was born, as were 5 of my 6 siblings. And my family moved out, we call it out west. We moved out to Edmonton, Alberta when I was 10 years old. And I consider myself a Westerner now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. My life. But I have lots of relatives still in Ontario, so I have kind of feet in both worlds. But yeah, and I've been associated with the Oblates for a long, long time, since the 1980s, actually.
Wow.
And more formally starting in the 90s. So that's just a little bit of what my background is.
So, Sandy, tell us, how did you met the Oblates? How did you even had the concept that Oblates exist and the Oblate charism? Like, how was that beginning for you?
I had no idea that Oblates existed until probably the late 1970s, and I felt a call to study theology. I had been raised in a wonderful Catholic family. But like so many in this world, in my teenage years, in my university years, and that age group, I left the church, and I left the church quite dramatically. And I was gone from the church and from my faith for about 10 years. And I found eventually that I couldn't really live without a faith.
Yeah.
But I didn't know anything about an adult faith. I recognized that I had a child's faith, and I started searching, and I started praying to be able to come back to church and be able to understand my faith. And that led me, we have a wonderful theological college here in Edmonton where I live, called Newman Theological College. And I, with great trepidation and fear, took one course there just to see what it was like. And I was taught by Oblates. I had absolutely brilliant Oblate professors. There were kind of two schools at this, two religious orders at school at the time: the Franciscans and the Oblates, and they were all gifted teachers. And I fell in love with the God that they introduced me to. And so that's where I first met the Oblates, but it's not where I met Eugene.
Okay. So it's really, it starts with personal encounter with the Oblates themselves. And
absolutely.
As we mentioned earlier, like I'm sure that you said that actually, like they were just different. And
yes.
So what makes that different? Maybe as you said, how did you meet Saint Eugene? How you encounter Saint Eugene de Mazenod?
Again, through the Oblates and their personal witness. So I was taught by the Oblates, and the brilliant teaching that they did. One of them, although they didn't talk about Eugene as their founder, like the Franciscans were always talking about St. Francis, but the Oblates back then would never talk about St. Eugene de Mazenod. But what they did was they preached the kind of a God, the aspect of God that Eugene taught and lived, which is a God of love, of mercy, of inclusivity, of welcome. The way they were as priests, they were friends, they were close, they were hospitable and welcoming. There was no clericalism and no formalism. It was just so welcoming and so down to earth. And then to kind of encapsulate, to put the story shorter, I ended up working with the Oblates.
Okay.
I was called, after I finished my theology degree, well, even before I finished it, I was called to work at their retreat house in St. Albert, which is a neighboring community. And once I was there, it's an Oblate retreat house, but there were no Oblates. So I asked some of the Oblates to come and speak about Eugene, just so that I could get to know him better. And this was before he had been canonized. And so there was a movement among the Oblates to begin to talk about their founder more.
I think that was the significant moments when Eugene was beatified first in 70s and after that canonized in 95.
Yes.
Because it became a gift to the church. Like
exactly.
And understandably, the Oblates would understand who their founder was, but it was kind of like an exclusive for the Oblates. But when the church officially said, well, look at the Eugene, look at the man who came from Marseille, from Aix-en-Provence, like learn from him and learn how to be a saint. So it's really appreciated that we are living through this time when we talk a little bit more about Saint Eugene.
Yeah, and that's exactly when it was, Jarek. It was in the mid-90s. And so we had Oblates come, and I mean, the first time I heard about Eugene, one of the Oblates spoke about what they call, it's well known in Oblate circles, his homily at Lent, where at the Church of the Madeleine. So Eugene gave when he was a young priest, as you know, gave a very, very powerful sermon at Lent to the workers and the peasants and the farmers, and to the people that the church didn't go to at that time. And he spoke to them in their own dialect. And what this Oblate priest was telling us, he quoted the homily where he said, Eugene said to these people, you know who you are in the eyes of God, in the eyes of the world. You're nothing, basically. You're the sweat of your brow. But he said, in the eyes of God, you're the children, you're the sons and daughters of God. You're the brothers and sisters to Christ. And that just struck me so much. And I thought, there's something about this man, Eugene, that I would like to know more about. And they spoke about his love for the church, how Eugene was just so loved the church, but he'd also critiqued the church when he was hurt by the church. And as a woman in the church, sometimes, well, you would know, sometimes we get hurt in the church, women in the church.
Yes, it is unfortunate. But,
yes. And for me, and I know many others, as an associate, I know many others of us as women, can find a place for ourselves with the Oblates.
Mm-hmm.
The Oblates called me into ministry, and I am forever grateful for that.
And I think it goes both ways. I so appreciate like having you and your voice at the provincial council table when we do the retreats. And I have the same experience on our vocation team when Serena is there, and I found that it really brings to the team and to the whole vocation ministry another aspect. Like it brings that different perspective, and I really appreciate that. Sandy, before we move any further, I think here is a very good question, and I want to talk about it a little bit later, but I think it's a good to address that because people can see by your name.
Yes.
And you know what HOMI stands for. Sandra has it next to her name, as opposed to OMI. I know what stands for, so I think everybody knows what OMI stands for, but what that H is about. Explaining OMI, it's Oblates of Mary Immaculate. So yes. Where that H came from?
Where does the H come? I call myself a homie. I'm a homie of the associates. About 10 years ago, I was named as an honorary oblate of Mary Immaculate. So I am an oblate associate and have been for years and years, but which is a newer way of relating in the congregation. Mm-hmm. But traditionally, the oblates have had the vocation of being an honorary oblate. And that is to honor or to name people who have, in their opinion, or from their point of view, who have exhibited who have lived the oblate charism and have contributed significantly to the congregation and to oblate life. So it's a worldwide designation. It's congregationally wide. The honorary oblates of Mary Immaculate, and I'm delighted and honored to be named one.
So it's a call extended by Superior General and the Council, right?
Yes. It comes. See, an Oblate Associate comes. It comes from our own province, from OMI Lacombe, Canada. Our identity is here, and our lived life is here. The honorary oblate comes congregationally wide from Rome, from the Superior General. Yes.
And the same, like I'm sure that everybody noticed the oblates were the little crosses and Oblate Associates. However, yes. every oblate when has a there we go. That's what I was going to ask about.
I brought it right here with me.
That's what I was going to ask. Every oblate at their perpetual vows received the big oblate cross, and honorary oblates received as well. How does it feel like to have your oblate cross?
Well, it is. It's very, very special because one of the things that you get to do is it's a cross of a deceased oblate. And so if you have an oblate in mind, or you know an oblate that you would like to honor. So my cross comes from Father Tony DeHane.
Wow.
He died. I knew him through the retreat work that I did at Star of the North, and he was retired by the time I met him. But he did some marvelous missions or ministry for his life with our Indigenous peoples in Canada. So, and I got to know him as a friend once he had retired, and he used to tell me stories. And so I was honored to choose his cross and receive his cross.
It's something about the oblate cross. I know somebody asked, I think during the week we had something on Facebook, and they asked what happened to St. Eugene's cross. If it's displayed somewhere in the museum, or what's happened. So actually it's passed on to Superior General. Every single time when Superior General is elected, the cross is being passed on to him. And I remember, and I think, Sandy, you had the chance to hold actually the cross of St. Eugene de Mazenot.
Yes.
And when you hold it, you basically feel the story. Like it's almost like being united or connected with the person. And you have the oblate cross that you have, but that St. Eugene's was just unique. It was just going back to the foundation, to the beginnings.
Yeah.
Sandy, so tell us a little bit. We've got the background. Who is honorary oblate? Like who will? Because there's many names. I've heard Friends of St. Eugene, the Mazenodian family. I've heard a missionary oblate association. Like, what would be an oblate associate in our understanding from the perspective within our province?
Right. And in OMI Lacombe, we have a very specific identity for our Oblate Associates. We've worked since 1996 when we were separate provinces. We've worked to create this, and we have Oblate Associates across the country. And basically what I would say is that we recognize that we have as Oblate Associates, men and women, that we have a call to share and to be a part of the Oblate charism itself. Mm-hmm. It's not just working beside Oblates, it's not just loving the Oblates, because, I mean, we all do, but lots of people love the Oblates and lots of people work closely with the Oblates. What this is more, we actually feel called to the charism itself. So the identity is at the level of sharing the charism. And so it's about sharing, feeling called into ministry, whatever that ministry is. Like, it's not to be mini religious. We're married, single, widowed, divorced. We're every state of life, mothers, fathers, everything. We live out our Oblate call, which is part of our baptismal call, right? We live that out in the world. Some of us work specifically in church ministry with Oblates and without Oblates. Mm-hmm. We have one of our associates is a director of catechesis. Several of them work in prison chaplaincy. We have teachers. We have retired people whose vocation is prayer. But it's all done with that Oblate heart, and it's all done with the same. We're shaped and formed. We to do formation to become associates. We're formed in the charism, and so we live that with an Oblate heart. And connection with community.
It's very true about I think it's still developing in some ways, that relationship and understanding of it. And I think you will have a pretty good idea as you work with the Oblates when you are amalgamating the provinces. There is all different understanding, and every province has a different approach to it. And as well, even right now, we're going through the process within the province that it's called listening for the Spirit, forward together, listening for the Spirit. So as the province, we are trying to really hear what God is calling us to do, or what is the way forward that God is calling us to do. And quite loudly, we've heard from that experience when we were having the meetings and conversations, like the importance of Oblate Association and being associated with lay people and appreciating their presence. But as well, you probably heard from many Oblates those fearful thoughts. Like, are they going to replace us? Are they going to tell us what we're supposed to do? Like, what's your take on it? Like, when you've heard those fearful, or I don't know if that's fearful is the right word for it, but like a little hesitations towards Oblate Association.
Yeah.
Like, well, how would you convince or said, well, you have nothing to worry about. Like, it's not what's all about.
Well, I've been around doing Oblate Associates since 1996. I was at the ex-Congress where this kind of formally started, a Congress that the congregation had called to look at laity and Oblates working together. And the Oblates themselves recognize the resistance. Like, it's in some of the documents where they're saying, we're called to open. Lay people are knocking at our doors. They want to come in. And the charism belongs to the church. But they say in their documents, we have to overcome our own resistance. And I would say partly in OMI Lacombe, Jarek, and you've been a part of this, we have grown into this acceptance. Because even in our own districts, our own provinces, before we amalgamated, there was resistance. Mm-hmm. And the boundaries and the fences were up. And it's only as we have taken the steps together and the laymen and women have been invited and been a part, and that the gifts have been allowed to flower. Like, they've opened up, and we hear from Oblates. Well, we hear from Oblates over and over how the associates enrich the community life, the ministerial life, their own understanding of the charism. Like, I can give testimonies of Oblates saying that. So I think partly we have to open ourselves and experience it first.
It's a new call. That's what we are talking about in that process, like listening for the Spirit, what the Spirit is calling us to do. And I think number of times I've heard that from it might be from you or from the conversations that we had with the Oblate Associates, like they don't want us as the community tell us how to live our life or what to do as a community, as they wouldn't want oblates to tell them how to live their family's life and what to do with their families. So I think that's cooperation. It's very mutual and very honest, and it's really focused on the charism and on St. Eugene. We are using quite often the word charism here, and I think maybe it will be helpful to explain that a little bit. Sandy, what's your understanding? How would you explain to a sixth grader what the charism is?
It's a gift. Charism means gift. And so we talk about the gifts of the Holy Spirit. A charism is a gift from God. And with the great religious congregations like the Jesuits, the Redemptorists, the Franciscans, and the Oblates, there are men and women in our church and in our world who receive this abundance of gift from the Spirit that meets the needs of their times, and they respond in outstanding ways. And so Eugene de Mazenod received the gift that he was open to God working in his life, and he received gifts. He received a charism. And so we talk about a religious organization or a congregation having that gift is given, and like it's the spirit of who you are as oblates, I would say. And each religious congregation has different ones because they're responding to the different needs, right? Yeah. Franciscans, creation and ecology and poverty, and Eugene has his own gifts. And so I say, as an Oblate Associate, and you as an Oblate, an avowed Oblate, I think would say the gifts of Eugene, or the gifts of the Oblate Spirit, they resonate in your heart. That's what called you, right?
It's the answer to the call. That's true. I know Father Frank Santucci from Oblate School of Theology in San Antonio. He will refer to that as a Missio Dei, that God has the mission, and we participate in that mission. It's not like that we have a mission. No. It's God's mission. We just participate in it. And I think the same with the charisma, as you said. It's a call for particular times, particular moments, and even the Oblate charism. I don't want to say that it's changing, but our answer to that charism is a little bit different because of the different situation, demographical situations, political situations, and poverty, whatever we find ourselves. It's a little bit different than it was during the time of St. Eugene himself, and right now. I said it's different, but the spirit is the same. The same approach.
And I would agree. I would say the heart of it is the same. So we don't want to get caught in what I call the capital T tradition, where we have to do everything exactly as St. Eugene did it. What we need to do is he creatively responded to what he saw where the church needed to go and where God was directing him. And so if that was to the slums of Marseille, right, that's where he went. If it was to rural Provence, where is the province where he lived, where the church had been decimated by the French Revolution, then he said, we got to go preach parish missions, right? That's not our case. I think every Oblate unit needs to ask, here and now, right now, like the work that you guys are doing in Hamilton, where's the need? How can we respond to the need? And it's the need of the poor. That's what Eugene, where isn't the church going? Where aren't the needs being met? And so you're responding so beautifully, creatively, and reaching out to and being with people. And all across the congregation, we need to do that.
And it's interesting because it's truly responding to the call. Like, I don't know, I think you had the chance to watch. I talked with Tony last Vocation Café about how we ended up in St. Pat's, and nobody ever dreamed like that we're gonna be there. But when we refer now, it will be almost 10 years. When we look at back, you can see that that's God's working. Like, it's not that we planned it that way. It's not that we planned or had that strategy for the parish. It's just constant responding to the needs, and it's beautiful to be a part of it, to really feel the part of it. Sandy, a little practical question now. I'm talking about Tony that I talked with last week. What is the formation process for those whom want to share in the Oblate charism? How long does the formation take? Is there a program? How does one become an Oblate Associate and share in the mission? So little practical things, like if anybody would be interested.
If anyone's interested, we do have a process for inviting people into association or recognizing people, and it begins within across the country. We have people within 4 of the 5 districts who can contact either the Oblate, they can contact an Oblate or someone who they know is an associate, and you begin by just we call it inquiring, like just what is it? What is it? What's the Oblate community here? What's involved? If there's not an Oblate community, then it's just inquiring into like what's the charism. So there's ways to do that. If there is an Oblate community or an associates community nearby, you're invited just to come. It's kind of like a come and see. You come and you hang out for a while. You come to the meetings that are held. And you just kind of with the animators in each district, you kind of discern: is this for me? Am I being called by the charism? Is the Oblate spirit part of what I live my gospel witness as? And then if it's discerned that yes, this is something, we do have a program, a process, I would say. Of learning about Eugene, learning about the Oblates in Canada, learning about the charism itself, learning to be, I would say, a person of faith, a mature person of faith, right? It's a formation process, a journey that you go on with others, reflection questions and those kinds of things. And then at some point, along the process, the process is set up to be about 2 years long. You're connected into the community while you're there, while you're doing it, and you're doing this formation. And then there's a discernment as to whether or not you are called to make a commitment. And for the first 3 years, it's a 1-year commitment. And then there's again a discernment that if the call, you're living as an Oblate associate, then you can make 3-year commitments from then on.
What do you mean by making commitment? What that commitment means?
A commitment means you come before you talk with your director, and you sort of say, I'm promising to, we don't make vows, we make commitments. I'm promising to live as an Oblate associate, which means I'm going to stay connected to Oblate community. I'm going to look at my ongoing formation in the charism and in the Oblate world. I'm going to be involved in some sort of ministry. It doesn't have to be a church ministry, but ministry to the poor, education, whatever. I'm going to be involved in ministry. I'm going to be responsible for mature prayer life, right? And I'm going to commit to do that in front of the community. I will come and I promise to do that. With the Oblate mission statement in front of me, I promise to do that for a year. And then that's when you receive your cross and you live the year. And after 1 year, you have another conversation with your director to sort of say, have I lived my commitments? Am I still called to live my commitments? How can I live them more deeply?
That's wonderful. And I think that's what we were talking earlier about. It's answering to that call. It's like a gift received and embraced. And I can see from some of the comments, I know that Rihanna, one of our teachers, there's many people who hear the call here. And I talked to you, Sandy, about it. Like, we are looking to introduce the concept of Oblate Associates. So for those of you who are watching from St. Patrick here and from neighborhood, we are working on it. So it's coming. And I think that will be one part that we will be inviting. And it's a process. As Sandy said, it's not an organization. It's not like a structure or what we will do. It's a journey that we take. It's a journey of friendship in mission, discipleship, So stay tuned. We will have more information on it. Just want to say, I've noticed from the comments we have our friends joining from Dominican Republic. So unfortunately, my Spanish is so poor, but bienvenido a nuestros amigos de República Dominicana. That's all I know. And only cervezas and baño. That's all I know in Spanish, apparently. And hola. But it's great to see you. Jose, thank you for joining us. It's great to see you here. And wonderful comments. We have another question. What exactly... Yeah, maybe we should specify that a little bit, because we talk a lot about charism of the Oblates and charism of St. Eugene. So what exactly it is?
Well, there's there's a very formal answer. There's 10 key points to the charism, et cetera, et cetera. I would say, for me, the heart of one of the major points is evangelization. Eugene knew a God of love and a God of mercy. He had experienced that, and he wanted to proclaim it to the whole world. So he would say things like, the only real poverty is not to know Jesus Christ, right? And the saving action of Jesus Christ. So it's his good. He had a conversion experience himself. Mm-hmm. Before the cross on one Good Friday, when he was a young man and searching. And he had this overwhelming experience of God's love and God's mercy. And it's sort of, I think that's what motivated him. And that's what draws me to him as well. Because there's a lovely Edwina Gately, who's a theologian, a spiritual writer, and an activist. She says the one-line definition of evangelization is, let me tell you what God has done for me. Mm-hmm. Right? Let me tell you what God has done for me. And that's what Eugene wanted to do. I just see him on fire with Christ to go and tell the entire world, do you know what God has done for you? To say to the poor and the marginalized and the abandoned and those who have no one on their side, to say, do you know who you are in the eyes of God? Do you know how much you're loved? And what you are, what God wants for you. So I would say evangelization is key. The cross is key for him. You have to mention we're Oblates of Mary Immaculate. So his experience of Mary as being a particular blessing or benefactor for the Oblates, but at her as disciple, as the one who says yes to God, and that openness to following God's will. So that's an aspect of it.
Certainly the one will be that I feel strongly about too. It's that being close to the people. And it comes from the experience of not only working with people, but trying to understand where people are coming from. His approach to evangelization. You mentioned the evangelization as the primary aspect of the charism, but as well his approach that when he called the Oblates, you have to help them to become fully humans, then Christians, and then saints, in that order. So we meet people where they are, in their human aspect first, and then you journey with them, introducing them to Christ and help them to become saints themselves. But that's one thing that I truly love about St. Eugene, that he was very human. Like, I mean, he was a bishop of Marseille, one of the biggest dioceses in France, but he certainly didn't see himself as above the people. Like, he was always among them. He served them to the end, and was truly embracing that concept, journeying together. That's why we call the mission with youth, not for youth. That's why we call the partners in mission. We always are close to the people, that not only those whom we serve, but as well those that we work with. And I think that's the Oblate Association comes from as well. Yes.
For me, part of where that comes from is when you know his own personal history. Yeah. Because he was, as you know, he was a victim, his family was a victim of the French Revolution. And so Eugene, from an aristocratic nobility family, had to flee the country and become an exile and live for, 10 or 12 years, his entire adolescence. Yeah. In poverty and fear, and moving from city to city and country to country trying to escape the effects of the revolution. And his family broke up. His mom and dad broke up when that happened. And so his whole early formative years were of the experience of being the marginalized. And I don't think he lost that understanding. He looked at the world through those eyes. He identified, I believe, with those who were lost.
And it's amazing how the journey happened for him. And he will refer to it as well as that was a journey guided by God from him. But the experience that he had with Don Bartolo Zinelli in was it in Venice or in Venice? Yes.
Zinelli was Venice, yeah.
Like somebody, the young priest that kind of noticed him kind of lost and accompanied him in the journey, and something that he treasured forever and referred to it. And I think that's, once again, this his experience with Zinelli came for him to form the youth organization, the youth congregation in X, the sharing his own humanity. And as you said, let me tell you what God have done for me. Exactly the same. Like that's the whole concept. I want to welcome as well friends that we have here from Ottawa. So we are some of the Oblate Associates and friends from St. John's Parish in Ottawa. Happy to learn more about the process to become associate. And yes, we are happy to share that. So I would encourage you, this is the last call. If you have any questions for Sandy, if you really would like to know something, just put them in the comments. We will address them as they come. But Sandy, I would like to ask you, like from the personal perspective, like being an Oblate Associate for so many years and being with the Oblates and sharing the Oblate charisma in St. Eugene, like what do you find the most, I won't say rewarding, in the sense like, where do you find the biggest blessing in this? Like, what would that be?
I'm glad you asked that, because I was thinking there's one aspect of the charism that I didn't mention. And it's key, and that's community. So Eugene, this abandoned, wandering adolescent, and this life of the migrant and the refugee, and then when he comes back and starts his, eventually, he has the vocation to the priesthood and starts his ministry by himself, etc. But then he very, very quickly realizes he can't do it alone. He doesn't want to do it alone. And so he calls Tompier and the others, and he starts this little, congregation community. But his love of community, his recognition of what the community was to be, and so he, as you know, he talked about you're modeled around, you're gathered like the apostles around Jesus Christ, but it's more that you live together to support one another and for the purpose of mission. And for me, I have to say the blessing of community, the Oblate community with the vowed Oblates, and then the Associates community. I meet once a month for about 8-9 months of the year. Now we're meeting on Zoom.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, we have an Oblate community, and we have grown over the years. We've become friends over the years, and we do formation. We talk faith and formation in our meetings, and I am so enriched and inspired by them and by my Oblate brothers. Not just those meetings, but just being together, being called to ministry with them. Has been that's been my gospel. That's been my gospel life. That's been how I live my baptismal.
What would you find the most challenging or maybe difficult, if there's any? Like, what was your experience that from experience of being an Oblate Associate, like that became a challenge, that you kind of were called to step out of the comfort zone or something like?
Yeah, I think there's still, as you mentioned earlier, there's still some fear. And see, I think it's a new way of being church. And Pope Francis is calling us to it. When he talks about, like, they're having that symposium on the priesthood, the common priesthood of all the baptized, and really having a laity that are, as someone said, worthy of our name, worthy of being the baptismal, the common priesthood. And we step back. We put priests on pedestals, and we distance ourselves and we let them do all the work, well, that's letting us off the hook. The clericalization also, the other way is the priests have all the power. The Vatican II ecclesiology calls for a new way of being church. And the Oblates say this in one of their chapter documents. They say, when we live, with laity, calling them to their baptismal rights and responsibilities, they say we're a new prophetic face of the church.
Yeah.
But not everybody wants to see that face. I would say it's Vatican II ecclesiology to me.
And we're still trying to embrace it after over 50 years.
And as Pope Francis would say sometimes, we're pushing back. We're going the other way in some places.
I'm really looking forward to see what the symposium will be. But Father Kemal Pichet sent it to us, a little info on it, and actually the information came up yesterday or a couple of days ago. And I think that will be very helpful to truly sit down and hear that understanding what truly priesthood is about, and how laity participate in the priesthood that comes from the baptism, because we are all called to be priests through the baptism. Exactly. And what that ministerial priesthood means, that it's not about the hierarchy or the titles that you care, but how that looks from the ministry perspective, how we shepherd the people, how we journey with the people. And I'm really looking forward to hear that.
And there's a flip that I would love to see that would say, how do the priests serve the people in their ministry in the world? So things like Christe Fidelis Laity, where the document on the laity, where it says, for me as a lay woman in the world, my ministry primarily will be in the transformation of the world, social justice, building the kingdom, relationships with God, those kinds of things. How does my priest empower me to do that? Does he?
Yeah.
Or is it I'm helping him or them instead of him helping me live my.
That's true. It's a journey that we take together, and I think that's the understanding that we are not above each other, or it's a journey as a church. And I think the understanding of the church herself, it has to be deepened. And as you said, it's lots of what's done, and I think that's what happened was very overwhelming for everybody. Like the Second Vatican Council, it was like they opened the door, they opened the window, and the Holy Spirit just purged in, and they're still handling, like it was like the papers on the floor, and they're still gathering what he meant for us to say. But it's so rich that it will take a while, and I think it's happening, and it's great to see that. Very practical question, and I was going to mention that, but that's how we're being called. Remember the practical issues. As an associate, do you get paid, Sandra?
No.
You don't get.
I will clarify that. Besides, I get the blessings. Yeah. No. However, I do have a job with the province. I am hired to be the provincial animator for OMI Lacombe Canada, but that's a job. But as an associate, no, we our gatherings, our animators at the district levels, et cetera, that's all part of our ministry.
And on the other side, like the Oblate Associates don't pay any fees neither, so it doesn't goes both ways.
That's true.
So it's kind of like in the church, but there's no fees and there's no payments. So we'll clarify that as soon as we start our formation process. Here we have a few words from our Father Provincial as well.
Oh, there we are.
I've learned new things about both of you. That's interesting. Probably that's right on the skidoos in the snowbanks. And as he said, as associates have been present since the beginning of my formation as an oblate, and Father Ken knows how valuable it is. It has shaped my vision of the community and how we are called to minister. And I believe that's the importance of having associates, because it gives a completely different, richer, wider view of our life, of our ministry, our called. And that's what vocation is about. We are being called, and presence of Oblate Associates is really helping us as the Oblates, and I think it's vice versa, to embrace the call that God is calling us to do. Because everybody has a different particular vocation, and walking the journey together within the culture of vocation, it really helps us to embrace this to the fullest. So Sandy, I want to really thank you for this time and for our conversation. I really appreciate that. And from the comment I've heard, that people really enjoyed it. And we will be starting Oblate Association across the country. So get ready. You will be busy in the next few months. But the last word, the last advice, if you would like to share, someone maybe who is watching this for the very first time and never heard about the Oblates or Oblate Associates, what would you advise them, or what would be your words of encouragement?
I would just continue seeking. If you're feeling an urge in your heart, but you don't know where it's leading you, is to try to find out more. I mean, if you don't know any Oblates, OMI Lacombe has a great website, and it talks about the charism and the mission and the ministry. And then talk to someone about what it's like. I mean, Jarek, you're available, but there's lots of people who would be available to just talk about it. And it's more, for me, it's more about you discover it. It speaks to you. So you're saying, or what's that, for me, it was the witness of Oblates. What you're doing speaks to my heart, and that's the way I want to live my faith. You don't have to be an Oblate, but there could be something about the Oblates that really just it's the same vision, and you discover it. The other thing I would say is, if you do know the Oblates, look around you to find people who have the charism and don't know it yet. I got called, and Jarek, you probably did too. You call people, you say, you know what, you've got an Oblate heart. Did you know that? Come and see what we're like. Because you and I know calling people is a lot of what it's about.
It's so often it starts with the simple invitation that is being issued. Like in any ministries, and looking from the perspective of the ministry within the parish, for example, or even like our Damasenot door, putting in the bulletin, come and join the ministry, never worked.
No.
The only way that it works is when you actually say to someone, you know, I see a gift that you have as a reader, as a greeter, or for hospitality ministry, or you're so passionate about the poor with the Damasenot door. The personal invitation is the most powerful invitation that you can invite people to ministry.
That's right. And when you call people to use their gifts, that's a gift. That's a gift for them. To say to someone, I see this in you. I see your heart for the poor. I see your love for God. I see, this or this. And they say, you do? And it affirms it in them, and then it allows it to grow. So the invitation to when you recognize something is just so powerful.
It's true. Well, Sandy, thank you so much. I really appreciate our conversation, and I learned so much again. It's helped me to all those conversations that we have in the Vocations Café. It's like an eye opener and learning something new every single time, because everybody has a different story. Everybody has something to share, and it's really powerful. So I want to thank you for being here, for sharing with us your personal experience of Oblate Association and Oblate Charism. And I wish you all the best. Stay healthy. And be careful with all the viruses around. And I'm sure we'll be meeting soon for our provincial council meetings and our process. So thank you again, and you have a great evening. And to all of you who are joining us tonight, stay tuned. We'll be continuing our Vocations Café. I always like to surprise who will be next. So stay tuned and we'll see. Thank you again. Good night, Sandy.
Good night, Jarek.